Hey everyone, and welcome back to a special edition of the FGTN show, Fishing Gear and Tech News. I'm your host, Alex Tim, and this is a different format than normal. Don't worry, we'll be back next week with our usual new gear news, announcements, deals, and industry roundups. But I think sometimes these deep dive episodes on specific topics with serious research can be really valuable. Well, I guess we'll find out. Let me know in the chat, in the comments, how you like this format, whether you're live or you're on the replay squad. I'd love to know your thoughts as we get going through this. I know that this is a time that works better for a lot of people, doesn't work every week for me. So we move this show. Normally it's Tuesday nights. We will do our normal one this upcoming Tuesday. So just in a few days here. So I've done a ton of research. I've prepared a ton of content, and that's what we're going to go through tonight. But don't worry, it will be interactive. So as people are saying hello here, seeing it pop up, Scratching with Blaine, how's it going? Wes, what's up? What's up? Nice to see you all here. So today, we're going to go deep on one of the hottest debates in freshwater fishing. Is LiveScope technology killing our lakes, and should it be banned? This topic has stirred up a lot of emotion, debate, and flat out division in the fishing community. And I know this video is not going to be for everyone. If you hate LiveScope and you don't want to hear about it, go ahead, turn it off, tune out, shut down. You don't need to listen to this. But if you are somebody who either has LiveScope and are interested, you want to buy it, you're interested in buying it, you know people that have it, or you don't, you never want to have it, you hate it so much, but you want to hear the side of the argument that is really focused on the data and the science and kind of both sides of it. This really isn't one side of it. Of course, you're going to find out my opinion on it, which if you know me, you already know. But this is then for you. But I want the interactivity, so please drop the comments in, and you can kind of see here, even if you're watching on the replay squad, sometimes the chat doesn't come through, but it will tonight because it's on the screen here, so you should be able to see it right there. All right, here's what's frustrating me. I've seen too many headlines, angry comment threads, and opinion pieces where the loudest voices sometimes don't own, and in some cases have never even used this technology. They haven't fished it. And some people haven't even seen it in action, but they're weighing in like experts and telling people it's ruining fishing. I watched what was it, a 2-hour podcast episode just this last week from a massive creator that doesn't have it. And there was a panel of, I think, 4 other people that also don't own it, but they're the ones speaking to, should it be banned? Should it not be banned? Should it be used? And I decided I'm going to actually go do some real research and not just have this be an opinion piece of somebody that does use live imaging and put it together. So tonight, think of this as a masterclass, if you will, on the current state of the LiveScope debate. I've done the research. I've read the studies. I've talked to many different people in the industry and outside of the industry on both sides of the argument. And I'm going to walk through all of it tonight. But here's the thing. I'll be reading from my notes and adding context as we go. This isn't just me talking at you for an hour or 2 hours. This is going to be a long one. It's going to be long. I've got 3 drinks here geared up. I got my Liquid Death and a couple of energy drinks geared up, ready to go for me here. But I won't be talking at you. I want you to sit back, take this in, and add your thoughts throughout. I'll prompt several times to give comments and questions. We'll take breaks, pull up what you're saying, and discuss it together. Think of yourself as a part of this masterclass or this content, if you will, this video. Your experiences and perspectives matter just as much as the data itself. So we'll go section by section. What LiveScope is and isn't. And I'll say the word LiveScope quite a bit, and I'm going to be using it. LiveScope is the dominant in the industry of live imaging. I'll use live imaging, forward-facing sonar, and LiveScope interchangeably. What the science actually says, what tournament trails are doing, how the industry is responding, and what the public is getting right or wrong. This is your chance to really understand this issue from all angles and get your voice in. If you're live, obviously it's going to pop up on the screen here, and that's great. And I may pull it up, and we may have a conversation around it as we go throughout. And if you're watching on the replay squad, I'll be active in the comments. The comments will be very active on this, and you'll be able to have your voice there and join in on this conversation as well. There's no hype here, no tribalism, just a real comprehensive look at where we stand on forward-facing sonar in 2025. Whether your team LiveScope or Live Imaging, no matter what brand you're with or support, think it's destroying fishing or you're somewhere in the middle, we're going to cover it all. So grab a coffee, an energy drink, a water, a Gatorade, and liquid of your choice, and let's turn this into the definitive conversation on LiveScope and Live Imaging. You ready? I'm going to take a drink here, and we're going to get into it. Chad's saying he's never used them, but I mainly fish areas where it can't be used, mainly ponds and rivers. No boat for me. Yeah, makes a ton of sense. So when you say it can't be used, are you saying it can't be used because it's banned, or it can't be used because from shore is really hard, it's not deep enough, there's too much vegetation? I'd love to know. Yeah, 32 on hard water. All right. What live scope or live imaging, aka forward facing sonar, is and isn't? Here's the forward-facing sonar basics. Forward-facing sonar, also I'll refer to it as FFS as well, such as Garmin LiveScope, was introduced in 2018. It's a fish finding technology that provides real-time live imaging of what's in front of an angler's boat or through an ice hole. Unlike traditional 2D sonar or down inside imaging that show a history of what passed under or next to the boat. Forward-facing sonar delivers a continuous moving picture of fish and structure in the water column ahead. It's often compared to an underwater ultrasound. Wherever you point the transducer, you see fish, cover, and even your lure moving in real time. This allows anglers to watch fish react to their bait, following, biting, or ignoring as it happens. And the ignoring does happen. I think everybody's witnessed that for sure. So, how does it work? Forward-facing sonar systems like LiveScope, Active Target, Mega Live use a narrowly focused sonar beam. It's roughly 20 to 30 degrees wide. It can be aimed forward with a trolling motor or a specialized mount like a pole. The sonar pings at a high frequency, higher than your down and your side view, typically in the 400 to 1100 kilohertz range. It produces high resolution images, but only of the specific direction that the transducer is pointing. The screen displays a live video like feed of fish and structure within that range, often up to about 100 feet with accuracy. You can go further, you can go closer, but 100 feet is kind of like the full range that you're going to get with some quality detail. Because it updates many times per second, movements of fish and lures appear fluid. However, it is not a magical fish catcher. The angler must manually scan the beam around to find targets. It's a narrow flashlight, think of it as underwater. It's not a 360 view. You only get to see where you have it pointed, and it's very narrow. That's why a lot of people struggle, and there's a whole industry around forward-facing sonar baits because you have to have it pointed exactly where you're casting if you want to actually see that lure. It doesn't identify species or automatically hook fish. The fisherman still has to interpret the blobs on the screen, cast accurately, and entice a bite. And if those fish are hugging bottom or in structure, you may not even know they're there, even if you look directly at them. So what are the capabilities and limitations? LiveScope excels at locating suspended fish and seeing how they respond to your presentation, dramatically reducing guesswork and wasted casts. You can, for example, spot a school of crappie 60 feet out, cast to them, watch on the screen as a fish approaches and bites your jig. This immediacy is what some call video game fishing, and it gets a bad rap for that. But it has its limits. The field of view is narrow, as we had talked about, so you can easily miss fish outside of that cone. It's also less useful in shallow, muddy, or heavily vegetated water where sonar range is reduced, or it just can't tell a difference because it doesn't have good enough target separation, like on the bottom. There's a steep learning curve in interpreting the live sonar image and keeping the transducer aimed correctly at moving targets. Some think it's steeper than others. Some people learn it really quickly, but there is a completely different learning curve there versus some of the other sonars that are out there. And crucially, seeing fish does not equal catching fish. And I think this is the thing that a lot of people that don't own it or haven't used it very much or at all don't understand. Just because you see the fish doesn't mean you're going to be able to catch it. Anglers often watch fish ignore lures on live sonar, which can be very frustrating. I've heard many times people say, you know, handing a mediocre fisherman live imaging makes him a decent fisherman, but it doesn't make him great. Just because you can see the fish doesn't mean that you can catch it. And I know this is true firsthand. How many of you have live imaging that have seen and haven't been able to catch the fish? I think it has to be more common than seeing a fish and getting it to bite. Skill and presentation and fish behavior still matters. I mean, if you own live imaging, you know it is a downright fact that you have found in seen and identified more fish swimming that you have not caught than you have caught, right? It happens all the time, but people don't believe it. They just think you see a fish, you can just basically target that fish and you're going to always get them to bite, and that's just not the way it works. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about this cost and equipment. Forward-facing sonar is a significant investment. A complete setup requires a specialized transducer and sonar black box module. In most cases, some of them don't, plus a compatible display unit, a chart plotter, screen, or whatever name you want it to go by. Transducers alone run between $1,000 to $2,000. In mid-size screens, cost $750 plus. In practice, a full forward-facing sonar rig is typically $2,500 to $4,500 for one screen and one transducer. And a high-end bass boat, they often mount multiple units. In fact, some tournament boats now carry 30,000 plus worth of electronics, with as many as 5 or more large screens on board. The arms race in electronics has raised concerns about a gear gap. We're going to talk more about that later. Though lower cost live sonar options are now beginning to emerge, allowing people to get into it at a lower price. Like, as an example, Lowrance, they introduced their $999 unit, just under $1,000 just in this last year. You need a power supply, usually dedicated lithium batteries, mounting brackets, pole mounts, map updates, additional considerations that add to the cost and the complexity. In short, LiveScope provides, or live imaging provides, unprecedented underwater insight at a price. It is powerful tech, but it's not that every angler can afford it. And I think that's a fair statement. Now, before we dive deeper, here's the 30-second cheat sheet that I'm going to go through really quickly on the different sonar types. LiveScope is powerful, but for a lot of people, it doesn't replace everything else. There's traditional 2D. So that's your cone straight down and it shows fish history. You've got side imaging, map structure. It maps the structure on the left and the right of your boat, but it's past tense. It's, again, historical, what was below you. And then there's forward-facing live sonar, which is that real-time flashlight beam that we had talked about. You aim it at fish, but not at high speeds or wide angles. Most of us mix and match. Use side imaging to find structure, then swing LiveScope over to watch fish react to your lure in real time. Importantly, forward-facing sonar is an extension of existing sonar tools. It's not a fundamentally new method of fish detection. You still rely on sonar pings and echoes. Forward-facing sonar just presents the information faster and in a more interactive way. Hear me say that, like, this is not brand new technology from the aspect of it detects fish in a different way. It is just using a different frequency and faster images showing up that make it appear to be live rather than looking at historical snapshots. As one article has put it, all these systems are effective for finding fish. The main difference is that traditional sonar shows a history. Forward-facing sonar shows what's in the water within its effective range, which is definitely limited, including fish, bait fish, cover, structure, all in real time. In practice, LiveScope does not drive the boat or make the fish bite. It's a powerful sensor, but success still hinges on angler skill and fish behavior. And there are still scenarios where if you are too shallow or too much vegetation, live imaging is not going to help. Here's the bottom line. Live sonar is a game changer in how much information you can get about a fish in front of you, no doubt. But it doesn't automatically fill the live well for you. It is a tool, not an insta-fish button. Now, I'm going to pull up the chat here, but as I'm doing this, and the next topic that we're going to get into is this hunting analogy that a lot of people use. And I want you to think about a couple of questions as I go through it, and drop your thoughts in the chat or the comments as I'm walking through it here. If you own a live imaging system, what's been your biggest surprise using it? If you don't own a live imaging system, what's your biggest concern about the technology? Do you think there's a difference between cheating and just having better gear? Let me know. I'm going to grab a swig here and I'm going to pull up some of these comments here. Uh, I can see it targeting deep water, cold fish in the summer, increasing mortality rates. Topic we're going to talk about. Appreciate you for being here, Fatty. Chad saying just small bodies of water, bank fishing areas that you don't put boats in. Yeah. Makes a ton of sense. Yep. Knowing where the fish are, catching them are two different things. 100% agree with you, Brian. I'd love to learn more for a possible ice fishing trip next year. Yes. There's a lot of content I'll be putting out, and then there's a lot of great stuff out there. Like Tom Wynn has a great course on it too that he does online. I've seen fish on my camera and still can't catch them. Yeah. Yeah, and that's something we're not going to go super deep into the camera aspect of it. We will touch on it a couple other times as well, but like, dude, you can drop a camera down. A camera. You can drop a camera in the water and look at a fish and hook it up, and that's not illegal. Kind of interesting, right? Scratching with Blaine says, I don't own one, but want to own one, but waiting to see what they are going to do. Yeah. Well, maybe this will give you some reassurance here in this video here. All right. Here's the hunting analogy. And the debate here is it fair or is it flawed? One of the loudest debates around LiveScope that at least I've heard many times from people who don't own a live imaging system is whether using this technology is similar to cheating in hunting. For example, spotlighting deer at night or using thermal drones to locate game. Have you heard of those arguments? I did, and even as recently as this week, and it's one of the biggest things that prompted me why it's so far up in this episode that we're going to talk about it. Critics argue that forward-facing sonar violates the spirit of fair chase, giving anglers an unnatural advantage that fish can't escape. It's been described as shining a spotlight underwater, in the same way that a high-powered Q-beam light can freeze deer in their tracks for an unethical hunter. LiveScope lets an angler zero in on fish and pick them off one by one. This analogy resonates emotionally. The idea that fish don't have a chance against live sonar has been a rallying cry on social media and forums, people calling it video game fishing or underwater spotlighting. However, many experts and anglers, like myself, believe this hunting comparison is flawed or oversimplified. The ethics of hunting and fishing have key differences. In hunting, fair chase principles, enshrined by groups like Boone and Crockett and enforced in law, explicitly ban certain technologies. You cannot use artificial lights to stun deer, nor drones or thermal imaging to track animals, and many forms of baiting or electronic calls are illegal. The reason is that hunting results in a kill. Technologies that remove an animal's ability to escape or that locate game with ease are considered unsportsmanlike and harmful to wildlife populations. And I agree with that. 100% agree with that. However, in fishing, by contrast, catch and release is common, and the take, aka harvest, of fish is regulated by limits. Most fish caught via sonar can be released unharmed, whereas a deer that is shot with the aid of a spotlight is gone forever. You're not going to shoot a deer, get it down, and then go let it go. Like, you can't do that. As fisheries biologist Mike Allen notes, this is a fisheries biologist, most bass fisheries have over 90% of fish released, and overharvest isn't a primary concern compared to habitat or other factors. Thus, the conservation impact of using high-tech aids is fundamentally different between fishing and hunting. Additionally, fish exist in a 3D aquatic environment that is far more variable and hidden than terrestrial game. Think like a deer, right? As an example. Even with LiveScope, fish are not easy targets. They can move freely up, down, left, right in an entire water column, often in schools, and can be extremely fickle about biting. Remember, just because you can cast directly at it, you could bonk the thing, you can't make it bite, right? And even if it does bite, you can still let it go. A deer in the open, lit up at night, offers a clear ethical line. It's an immobilized target. A bass seen on LiveScope might still dart away or ignore every lure that you throw at it. As pro angler Brandon Lester explained, live sonar simply, this is a quote, helps me determine the depth of bait fish, locate fish, see how they react to my lure, and see how deep my lure actually is. It provides information, but the outcome still depends on angler skill and fish mood. To put it another way, forward-facing sonar increases catchability but doesn't guarantee catch. Fisheries scientists define catchability as the fraction of a fish population captured per unit effort. And new tech can raise that fraction. Yes, forward-facing sonar lets anglers find fish in open water that previously might never have been bothered. Yes, it allows more efficient targeting of the biggest fish in a group. Some anglers admit they selectively go for the larger sonar returns. And at times I do too, right? These are valid concerns similar to fair chase. But even so, fishing has always allowed fish finding tools, sonar, GPS, mapping, etc., that would be unthinkable in hunting. There are no laws against using fish finders. In fact, any boat in the last few decades likely has at least a basic sonar and GPS on board. Underwater cameras, chum, even hiring guides, all these give anglers advantages over fish, yet are generally accepted, with a few exceptions. Drawing the line at forward-facing sonar can seem arbitrary. So, if we get into the realm of influencers and expert opinions here, opinions from fishing personalities are split. Some veteran anglers feel forward-facing sonar crosses an ethical line. For example, Bassmaster legend Rick Clunn reportedly expressed that meat fishermen, people that fish to keep, right, fish to harvest, using LiveScope were absolutely emptying our lakes of fish, implicitly equating it to the outlawed practice of spotlighting deer. In other words, too effective to be fair. Similarly, outdoor writers have noted that opponents see it as almost as effective in pursuit of bass as big spotlight in the illegal pursuit of whitetails, hence that comparison. Now, on the other side, many anglers push back on the hunting analogy, including myself. They argue that if we label forward facing sonar unfair, then by the same logic, we'd have to question all sonar and modern gear. Remember our comparison at the very beginning of these different technologies and how this isn't actually anything new. It's just a different way of using sonar. It's a slippery slope. As one post on social media that I saw said, people were outraged when flashers originally came about, then paper graphs, then GPS, then side scan. Believe it or not, even the plastic worm was once seen as cheating. All those innovations are now normal. In fact, backlash to new fishing tech is a tale as old as fishhooks. Toward the beginning of bass tournaments boom, many even supported banning the ubiquitous soft plastic worm and now archaic flasher units because they were believed to be giving too much advantage. The sky didn't fall, fisheries endured, and now everybody uses these every day. And in fact, sometimes we don't even use them because we feel like they don't give us enough of an advantage. And I think this is just another stage in that. Ethically, it's absolutely worth discussing where technology and sport should be limited. But the consensus so far is that forward facing sonar is just another tool, albeit a very advanced one. If an angler uses it to harvest excess fish, that's a regulation issue, bag limits, etc., not a technology issue per se. Many fisheries managers maintain that technology is not a bad thing, but it is a factor to be considered. And if it ever does threaten populations through overharvest, then targeted rules like reducing creel limits or gear restrictions in certain fisheries could address that. At present, no state has fair chase style laws against sonar. The hunting analogy, while thought provoking, is emotional. It's not wrong, but definitely incomplete. Fishing's context with catch and release, dynamic fish movement, and existing harvest limits makes LiveScope a completely different animal than a thermal scope on a rifle. So, in summary, in this section here, calling LiveScope spotlighting fish is an exaggeration. It does tilt the odds toward the angler by revealing fish that might otherwise go unseen, just as previous sonar advances did. Recognize I said just as previous sonar advances did. Every advancement in fishing technology has been there for one purpose and one purpose only, to give a little bit more advantage to the angler. But fish still have plenty of ways to evade capture. They're not being blinded or paralyzed by a light. They're not having their mouths opened and mechanically closed on your bait so that way you can keep them, and they're not being killed just because you caught a fish. And anglers are still constrained by bag limits and fish behavior. As the Nebraska Game and Parks Fisheries chief put it, forward facing sonar might just catch somebody a limit faster. It doesn't mean they can keep more fish by any means. And as another commenter on social media put it, if it truly were like illegal hunting methods, we'd likely see fish and game agencies outlawing it, which so far they have not. All right, take a break here before the next section and read the chat here. What do we have people saying? Uh, Knowing where the fish are and catching them, two different things. I would love to learn more. I already covered these ones. I have seen, yep, got that one. I don't own one, but you want to. Wayne, what's up, Wayne? This topic should be more about the fishing pressure and mortality on the fish than the legality of the device. I agree. And in fact, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on for sure. And I agree with you. It's not about should you ban the technology? It's more so around how do you use it appropriately and how do you use it in a way that it's not hurting fish? And if we do have a fish problem, let's solve the fish problem. Let's not just ban technology because it's the easy way out, even though it's probably not what's even causing the problem to begin with, right? Barrel trauma. LiveScope's not causing barrel trauma, right? No, you may target fish that may be more susceptible to barrel trauma because you have live imaging. But what we need to figure out is maybe we need education on what not to target, what to do if you catch a fish like that. What are those options? We got Wayne here with another comment. I think our resource officials will now need to survey fish populations more often to stay on top of the lake's health. I agree. And I've got a few we're going to talk about here in an upcoming section, but we 100% need more data. I totally agree. All right. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about what some tournaments have done, bass fishing tournaments in particular. And so here's some questions to think about as I go through this and drop them in the chat or in the comments. Should tournament rules be stricter than what regular weekend anglers can use? Do you think the gear gap in fishing is a real problem or just part of the sport? And have you ever felt disadvantaged fishing against someone with way better electronics? Okay. Tournament fishing and competitive pressure. We'll take a quick pit stop here because I can already hear all the comments about it. Well, it is banned actually already in that tournament or this tournament. But remember, what we're talking about here is we're not pros, right? I mean, sure, maybe some people watching this are pros, but we're not pros necessarily, right? We're talking about that weekend angler, the recreational fisherman, right? So that's what we're talking about. If there's tournament bans or rule tweaks, it's a whole different rabbit hole. So we're going to hit the highlights and then get back to us weekend warriors here in just a second. I will also explain, which I think is very important to know, the three general reasons why these tournaments and competitions have regulations around live imaging and why that's actually happening. And quick spoiler, it has nothing to do with saving the fish or the fisheries. That's not why they're doing these things around live imaging in these tournaments. We'll talk about it. LiveScope has become almost mandatory, as we've seen in all of the pro circuits. By the 2024 season, you could count on seeing at least one forward-facing sonar unit in virtually every Bassmaster Elite, MLF, or top-level crappie or walleye boat. That ubiquity has forced tournament organizers to react in very different ways. We're going to talk about it here. Bass now limits each boat to a single forward-facing sonar transducer and roughly 55 inches of total screen real estate across their boat. MLF lets anglers turn their forward sonar on for only one competition period a day. That's about a third of their fishing time. The National Professional Fishing League, NPFL, went further. They announced a full season ban for 2025, and many high school or collegiate trials prohibit the tech outright in order to keep costs and barriers to entry down. That gear gap idea. Those rules experiments are driven by these three pressure points. First is the gear gap, as I just said. A complete LiveScope setup, as we had talked about, still runs $3 to $5 grand on the low end. So pros, even high school, collegiate as well, they feel compelled to spend big, while like the newcomers that are coming into the sport, they struggle to keep up. They can't afford that. And so by doing these different regulations, they're trying to close the gear gap so that gear isn't the only reason why the elite of the top are catching an ounce or a pound or a bigger bag, right? Trying to it's a competition, it's a tournament, it's for entertainment, it's a sport. You need to have equal rules for that. We're not talking again about weekend anglers or recreational fishing here. Second, the skill gap. This is actually true, believe it or not. Younger video game anglers tend to master the live view quickly, whereas some veteran sticks refuse to use it and still win when the conditions suit their strengths. And there's some examples of this. We're not going to talk about them here tonight, but it is true. Younger anglers that maybe grew up playing video games catch on to this technology really, really fast. Older anglers that have been, pro fishing for long periods of time are struggling, and it takes them longer to get on in up to the same level of understanding the technology. So there's actually the opposite happening, where maybe a younger angler can come in, gain an advantage with the technology, and then make a bigger bag at the end and actually win. But you're seeing the veterans when you're in conditions like shallow rivers, really muddy, high vegetation areas where they go back to the old tactics, not using it, they win. And so this is to help with that skill gap. The third is the viewer gap. Watching an angler call shots on live TV because they can see it on their live imaging, it can be thrilling. It can be exciting for sure. But long stretches of that, staring at a screen, can also sap the broadcast energy and entertainment value. All that matters, but it lives in the tournament sandbox. Again, none of those reasons, none of it at all has anything to do with the health of the fishery or the fish. And I think on the recreational and the weekend angler side of the house, that's what we're talking about, right? We're not being filmed and putting on a TV show. We're not trying to catch a pound bigger bag than the guy that's, half a mile away from you. That doesn't matter to the average angler, right? And that's why we have to keep these in separate buckets. Just because tournaments are banning it or they have special rules, it's for different reasons, as we just outlined. So directors, they'll keep tweaking their own rules, and maybe we can learn something by these different rule sets as they play out. One that I'm actually really excited about is the idea of being only able to use live imaging for one of 3 fishing periods. I think that's great. I think what'll be interesting to see is what is going to happen in terms of the same angler when they're using live imaging for one of the periods and the other 2 periods where they're not. Do they actually catch more fish, less fish, bigger fish, smaller fish? Like, it's just going to be interesting to see how this season rolls out. And maybe that can help us gain some data because they're fishing all the time. So, based off the questions that I had asked, I am interested in seeing what your thoughts are on the tournaments. We got Chad saying it's kind of hypocritical saying gear gap when you have a fisher going out with 60 to 80K bass boats, you probably don't see limits on boat, but LiveScope is a thing. Yeah, it's a fair thing. Um, I think the gear gap typically shows up more in like high school anglers, right? In a lot of times in the high school leagues, you don't need to have a boat to go out and fish these tournaments. You usually have what is it called, like a boat captain. So they get volunteers to actually drive them around, and it's just whatever technology that captain has on their boat. So I think it's more so in like the high school, maybe even the collegiate levels for sure. I plan on purchasing before this winter. Is the 10-inch bundle currently on sale for 2,500 the best deal I will see, or should I wait? I heard rumors of July 1 price increases from Garmin. Yes, price increases will go up July 1st from Garmin. That bundle, I think, is going to go up to $3,000 on July 1st. So if you're interested, I think I've got a link to it. I mean, you obviously know where it is. I think Fish USA, Shields has that one. Cabela's might even have that one on sale. But yes, if you want that screen, it is a great deal. And right now, that's probably the best price that you're going to see on it. Maybe Black Friday timeframe, we might see something, but up until then, I don't think we're going to see any better deals than that. The prices on those bundles will go up by $500 on July 1st, is what I have heard for tournament. Yeah, for tournaments for sure. I mean, like, I've listened to a lot of podcasts and people on the tournaments, trails, and, like, it's a real thing, dude. Like, some of the entries for some of those tournaments are expensive, and then when you factor in, like, all of the gas, just driving there, the gas for the boat, the wear and tear, things are always breaking, the lodging, like, where are you gonna stay? You gotta have a hotel or a motel, or, like, it adds up. So I can understand why, like, if you're not winning in these tournaments, you're not in the money, these get expensive quick. Uh, but yeah, I agree with what you're saying there. So as we get into the next section, this next section is going to be a big one. It's the big science section. So we're going to talk about data and science and in a lot of things that we've seen so far. And as I go through it, a couple of things that I want you to think about and I want you to comment around. If you don't have LiveScope, are you worried about bag limits getting cut because of people who do? I think it's a valid question. I've heard it. We're going to talk about that a little bit. If you do have LiveScope, since getting it, I should like almost put a poll up on this one. If you do have LiveScope or live imaging, since you've gotten it, do you keep more fish, fewer fish, or about the same? Let me know down in the comments below. And lastly, what would convince you that LiveScope either is or isn't hurting fish populations? All right. Throat's getting dry. We're about halfway through. Noise versus reality. Let's cut through that hype. LiveScope hasn't just changed fishing, it's hijacked the conversation. I think everybody here in some way, shape, or form would agree with that. It's hijacked the conversation about fishing. Scroll YouTube and you'll hear former pro Randy warning it will destroy fish populations, while tech friendly channels like Tactical Bassin call it the future of angling. The extremes get clicks. Let's be honest, they do. But surveys tell a calmer story. Most anglers land somewhere in the middle, curious, maybe skeptical, but not racing to outlaw the tech. The media pours gas on that fire. Example, In Fisherman Ran, is forward facing sonar ruining fishing? Not really, but it is changing it. Yet sensational thumbnails like study shows devastating effects spread on social media, often citing no real science. Myths follow LiveScope is wiping lakes clean. Everyone wants it banned. Claims that actual data or agency surveys don't back up. Case in point, listen to this. Here's some real data. When Wisconsin's DNR floated a ban in its 2024 spring hearings, anglers voted it down 2-1. Regulators took the hint. Just keep watching the science, but do not do any knee-jerk bans. Here's the takeaway on this topic. The loudest voices aren't the lake managers. and they're not the bulk of the weekend anglers or recreational anglers. Tonight, we'll separate that online noise from the biological facts before we ask the question that really matters. Does LiveScope actually hurt the resource, or are we reacting to headlines? Now, real quick, before we dig into biology, let's address the worry of those that don't have the tech and only get out fishing maybe every once in a while, and their main reason for fishing is to catch a full limit and cook it up. Here's that objection that I've heard. I don't own forward-facing sonar. I just want to fish fry. If regulators slash bag limits because of LiveScope, I'm the one who loses. It's a legitimate fear, and agencies are watching the data closely. And I think, fortunately for you, jumping to the chase, I don't think you need to worry as much as you may think that you need to worry. All right. The landmark Arkansas Game and Fish Creel survey of roughly 700 crappie parties found LiveScope users caught roughly twice as many fish per hour, yet they kept only about 3 more fish per trip because they released a higher share. Those with LiveScope kept 42% of the fish they caught versus those without LiveScope kept 64% of the fish they caught. In other words, efficiency jumped. And I think that's the thing that we're seeing. You're becoming more efficient with this tool of live imaging, but your harvest isn't necessarily changing or changing a ton. Compare that to Minnesota, where panfish limits on many lakes were trimmed after biologists saw overall harvest climbing. But again, what they dictated was sonar or no sonar. The DNR stance is efficiency keeps rising. Bag limits are their first lever, not a tech ban. And fisheries chiefs remind us that even LiveScope, daily possession limits still cap what leaves the water. So here's the takeaway for that concern. Yes, tighter limits can feel like collateral damage if you're fishing old school. But so far, the science shows LiveScope boosts catch rates more than it inflates actual harvest. And agencies are using the same bag limit toolbox that they've always used, the ability to change your bag size, not rushing to outlaw the tech. Keep that context as we go through the biological impact section that I'm going to talk about next year. So at this point, if it's not obvious, I want to call out my opinion on the topic of banning live imaging. Sure, you've already guessed it, though. I do not think a blanket LiveScope ban is the answer. And honestly, I doubt it will ever happen. Honestly, I doubt it will ever happen. Writing and policing something like that would just be a complete nightmare. I mean, think about it. We're not going to talk about how a ban would look or anything like that. If a ban ever does end up happening, then we'll talk about it. We'll talk about all those repercussions. We'll talk about how they could do it, what that would look like. But not a single agency, state agency, has talked about we're thinking about doing a ban. None of them have. They've some of them have surveyed around it, and anglers have 2-to-1 said do not do it. And some of them are saying let's look at the data before we make a knee-jerk decision. Okay, so what's the biological impact and the fisheries pressure that we've seen based off of data so far? To date, there is no peer-reviewed study demonstrating that forward-facing sonar has caused widespread fish population declines. None. No peer-reviewed study that actually shows forward-facing sonar is doing what people are claiming it is doing. No data proving that point. There's data proving otherwise. Fisheries biologists across multiple agencies have been tracking this issue precisely because social media has stirred concerns. That's why they're looking into it. They're not looking into it because they're worried about it. They're looking into it because so many people are being vocal about it. And so far, their findings provide some reassurance. Live sonar does increase catch rates, sometimes dramatically, but it has not led to a proportional increase in harvest that would endanger populations under current regulations. Don't worry, I'm not just giving you the high-level synopsis. I'm going to give you some real data here. All right. A landmark study by the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, AGFC for short, in 2021 looked at crappie fishing with and without live sonar. They interviewed nearly 700 fishing parties and compared those who had LiveScope on board versus those who didn't. Here's the results. Anglers that had live sonar caught about double the number of crappie per hour, 2.4 fish an hour, as those without, roughly 1.1 fish an hour. That's a huge jump in catch efficiency, right? For sure. Again, back to efficiency, it should go up because you should be able to target more productive areas, confirming that forward-facing sonar really does help anglers find and catch more fish, at least for crappie, because that's what this is around. This is crappie. We're not going to generalize here. We're going to look at the data and the facts. However, when it came to harvesting those fish, taking them home and eating them, the difference was much smaller. The LiveScope users did not harvest twice as many fish as the non-users. In fact, the study found harvest rates were similar. Believe it or not, LiveScope anglers tended to release a greater portion of their catch, keeping roughly 42% of fish caught, compared to traditional anglers who kept roughly 64% of what they caught. I know I gave these tidbits of facts earlier. This is the full context. Because the LiveScope group caught more fish but kept proportionally fewer, the average number of fish taken home per trip wound up only roughly 3 fish higher for LiveScope users than others. This was not something that would cause concern on a broad scale, concluded the AGFC biologist Andy Young. Essentially, even though forward-facing sonar users caught limits a bit faster, they often still respected the bag limits and didn't greatly exceed the harvest of traditional anglers in total. The Arkansas study also busted the idea that LiveScope users only keep big fish and decimate the trophy sizes. They found no significant difference in the size of fish kept between the two groups. If anything, catch this, if anything, non-live imaging sonar anglers had slightly heavier fish on average, but by only an ounce or two. So it's statistically negligible. And so they're not making a claim that if you have live imaging, you're gonna keep lower weighted fish. They're not saying that. They're saying there's no difference, even though it is actually the live imaging units users actually had lighter bags. This indicates live scope anglers were not cherry picking only the largest crappie for the cooler. Both groups kept a similar mix of sizes. And since crappie are a prolific, short-lived species, taking some of the largest or oldest fish isn't necessarily harmful to the population. Young noted a 2-pound crappie likely has already spawned multiple times and is nearing the end of its natural lifespan. So removing a few big ones is probably not contributing as much to the fishery as some of the 10-inch fish, and may not make it to the next spawn anyway. Perhaps more importantly, AGFC pointed out that crappie populations naturally have high turnover. About 65% of adult crappie die each year from natural causes or angling combined. This means even if forward-facing sonar leads to somewhat higher harvest in a given year, the population can rebound quickly if needed. Crappie grow fast and have strong year classes. Managers can adjust limits if they see excessive harvest. In Arkansas, they saw no evidence of a problem. Out of 700 parties surveyed, get this point, because I think earlier when I was talking about the LiveScope users, how they caught twice as many fish, but they didn't keep the same percentage. You may say, "Oh, it's because they were capped out," right? So like they caught 200 fish, but they could only keep 20 of them because that's what their bag limit is for the day. Well, get this. In Arkansas, they saw no evidence of a problem. Out of 700 parties surveyed, those same 700 people, only 16 out of 700 had a full limit of crappie. So that blows that excuse out of the water too. And those were mostly on lakes that were known for abundance, those that did keep a full limit. In Young's words, harvest-oriented angling has not shown to be detrimental to long-term crappie populations here. And if higher harvest did start to affect things, the population could rebound very quickly with a regulation adjustment. Other states, let's not stop there. Let's go into more data. Other states found similar results. Creel surveys in Texas echoed the Arkansas findings. Crappie anglers with forward-facing sonar caught roughly twice as many fish, but did not harvest twice as many. They still hit the same bag limits as before, just more efficiently. Texas also looked at bass anglers and found those using forward-facing sonar caught only a few more bass on average than those who didn't. And since almost all bass fishing is catch and release, and like double check that, like think about that. This is actually something I didn't think about until getting into this research. Almost all bass fishing is catch and release. You're not usually keeping them to eat them, right? So the impact on a bass population is negligible. A controlled study in Kansas in 2021 put biologists on a lake fishing half the time with LiveScope and half without. The LiveScope days yielded one more crappie and two more total fish per team than the no scope days, with slightly larger crappie. But the differences were deemed statistically insignificant. In other words, on that 6,800 acre reservoir, LiveScope did not dramatically change the outcome in a short trial, possibly because not everyone was an expert with it yet, or fish were spread out, which I would argue is more common than most people would like to agree. A lot of people aren't experts with it yet, and fish are generally usually pretty spread out, other than certain times of the year. Let's talk about Minnesota and Ontario. Uh, Biologists in Minnesota and Ontario are keenly interested as well. The Minnesota DNR has launched a multi-year study pending funding for 2026 to evaluate forward-facing sonar impacts on walleye, muskie, and crappie in both open water and ice fishing. The plan includes measuring how forward-facing sonar increases catch per hour and whether that could raise harvest beyond sustainable levels in some lake types. The project description notes that increased capture efficiency could lead to increased harvest in meat-oriented fisheries or increased catch and release mortality in sport fisheries. I saw a comment around this already before. And they aim to quantify these effects. So Minnesota is proactively seeking data to ensure they can adjust regulations if needed. But until those results are in, they, like most state agencies, have not imposed new rules. A Minnesota DNR fisheries chief was quoted as being aware of the technology's spread, but also that there are far bigger problems to worry about for fish populations, examples like habitat and climate. We see the sentiment widely. Biologists are consistently ranking factors like habitat destruction, nutrient runoff, invasive species, and climate variability as higher threats than sonar. In fact, many natural resource departments have explicitly said that they're monitoring forward-facing sonar, but do not see it as a major threat to fish populations at this time, partly because bag limits and existing regulations act as guardrails. All right, some other biological considerations. While overharvest is the main concern, there are related biological effects to consider. Targeting of vulnerable species or seasons. One worry that has come up that people vocalize is that forward-facing sonar might let anglers exploit species during vulnerable periods, like crappie or bluegill in their winter schools during spawn, more effectively than otherwise. Ice fishing is a particular case. Forward-facing sonar through the ice allows an angler to drill one hole and scan all around for schools instead of randomly drilling dozens of holes. And this is true. This efficiency could lead to more fish, especially panfish, being caught in the winter when they group up. Some anglers have voiced that on certain small lakes, ice fishermen with LiveScope have significantly higher success, which I agree is 100% true, which could pressure those populations. However, again, as long as limits are followed, the population impact is moderated. Agencies might respond with tighter panfish limits in winter if needed. Again, a ban is not the answer here. Here's another one. Catch and release mortality. This is specifically something people have asked about, or delayed mortality. Forward-facing sonar might increase the number of fish caught and released. So one could ask if that leads to more fish dying post-release from stress, hook injury, or barrel trauma. The barrel trauma issue is noteworthy. Forward-facing sonar allows anglers to efficiently find fish in deep water, say 30 plus feet, that they might not have specifically targeted as much before using live imaging. If anglers catch many deep fish, like suspended walleyes or bass, those fish can suffer barrel trauma, which is swim bladder expansion. if they are pulled up too fast. The Bluefish Canada report pointed out that the ability to efficiently find fish in open water using forward-facing sonar means more fish may be subjected to barrel trauma. It suggests we might need more angler education on fizzing, using a needle to deflate swim bladders, and I know that's not everywhere that's recognized as an appropriate thing to do, or using descending devices to release deep fish, which may be overkill if it's like a small panfish or something, but things to think about. Some jurisdictions, like in the ocean for rockfish, actually already require or encourage devices to mitigate barrel trauma. If forward-facing sonar causes freshwater anglers to catch more deep fish, example being midsummer bass suspending over 40 feet on the lake, or lake trout in 80 feet, this could be a valid concern. However, it is manageable. Tournaments often have rules or practices for deep fish, and we could see new rules like mandatory use of descending tools in certain lakes if a problem is observed. Probably more so on like the tournament and the competition side. So far, studies like Arkansas found that even if more fish were caught, survival was high because anglers released most and fish care was decent. In Arkansas, survival from catch and release is typically high, over 90% for bass. So increased catch doesn't equal increased mortality as long as the fish are handled and released properly. And those that are harvested are capped by daily limits. I think the idea is that like if you pull up a fish too fast and it gets barrel trauma, right? And you can see its swim bladder, that should count that as part of your bag, right? If you can't properly release the fish, and I get there is delayed mortality that could happen 5 minutes later once it's already swam away, things you can't necessarily control. But the idea is if you can't effectively release the fish, it has to count towards your bag. All right. Another objection that people have brought up, selective harvest or trophy fish. Another concern is that forward-facing sonar could enable size selective harvest. Anglers might cherry pick only big crappie or walleye out of a school, since you can often judge relative size on the screen. This could potentially remove a disproportionate number of large spawners from a population. However, evidence so far suggests that this has not been widespread enough to show up in population metrics. The Arkansas and Texas data showed anglers weren't exclusively calling big fish. Lengths of harvested crappie were similar whether or not live sonar was used. For species like bass, harvest of trophies is already very low. Most bass anglers release anything big to preserve the fishery, and most bass are released anyways. For walleyes, many jurisdictions have slot limits to protect those larger spawners. Forward-facing sonar, live imaging, LiveScope does not change those rules. It just might help anglers hit their slot limit quicker. In fact, if anglers limit out faster, here's an interesting perspective. In fact, if anglers limit out faster, they might quit fishing sooner, which could reduce overall fish handling. And an interesting angle, but in my opinion, is valid. And I have seen people do this. I've seen people go out with live imaging, especially on the ice, and they're out there ice fishing with live imaging. They catch their limit and they're done in an hour and a half or 2 hours. They're not out there fishing all day, catching species they didn't want to catch and having to get to release them. So it could actually be better. It's an argument. It's an angle. It's yet another one of those things that you could argue, but without data, there's no backing to it, right? So far, the actual data doesn't show a need for drastic measures. As AGFC's study essentially concluded, there's little evidence to support panic over live sonar. Anglers with forward-facing sonar catch more fish. Sure, yeah, they do. But they tend to abide by the same harvest norms as others, and many are practicing catch and release unless they're out for a fish fry. The crappie and bass populations measured were doing fine. In truth, when fisheries do face crises, it's often unrelated to sonar. Example being, crappie overharvest typically comes from no limits or too liberal of limits, not from the method of finding them. Walleye declines usually tie to poor spawning year classes due to environmental factors. All right, so looking forward here, agencies are not complacent. They are continuously gathering data. I think it's very clear, right? And we need them to do more. We need more data, more studies, more surveys, more observing the impact of this, because I want the same thing as many do. Let's keep the sport, let's keep fishing strong for as long as possible for the next generations. Many states have initiated specific questions about live sonar and angler surveys. In 2023, more data. In 2023, Wisconsin's Conservation Congress survey, an advisory public input process, even asked anglers whether they'd support a ban on forward-facing sonar due to concern over fish populations. This indicates that the issue is on the manager's radar. The outcome of that was largely negative. Anglers did not support a ban in Wisconsin, but it highlights that the question is being explored. Going forward, if any clear evidence emerges that a certain fishery, a certain body of water, is being exploited due to its structure, thanks to forward-facing sonar, we can expect targeted management, like maybe no live sonar on the lake during X season or stricter creel limits on specific species, right? I think those are the right approaches. But at this juncture, the overwhelming expert view is that forward-facing sonar is not the big bad thing for fisheries health that some think it is. Fisheries scientist John Chick summed it up. We have much bigger issues with fish populations. Habitat, water clarity, water quality, forward-facing sonar might change how anglers fish, but it hasn't been shown to break the resource. Or as Bassmaster's conservation director, Gene Gilliland, said informally, it's not the apocalypse for fish that Facebook would have you believe. In fact, state fisheries chiefs from around the country meet regularly, and forward-facing sonar has been a topic. They note it's a hot-button social issue, but not yet a biological crisis. Other environmental challenges that I've seen people talk about that I'm just going to quickly address, just because I know they're there and I don't want them to just creep up in the comments and people say, oh, well, what about this? And you didn't even talk about this. You just must be ignoring these opinions or facts. So we're going to talk about them real quick. One could argue that if forward-facing sonar leads to more fishing success, it might increase fishing pressure. More people go because it's fun or they're successful at it. But here's what the data shows. License sale trends have not shown a spike specifically tied to sonar. Any COVID era increases were broader. So a pandemic drove more sales than any sonar technology. And increased interest in fishing is not necessarily a bad thing if it's managed, because especially like that money should be going towards restocking, management efforts, and all of the such. And if it is somebody that's never fished before, the likelihood of them going out and buying a $5,000 unit or being incredibly successful and just nailing a lake limit after limit after limit is actually pretty highly unlikely. So it could be seen as actually even a better thing than a harmful thing if more people are going fishing. And ultimately, isn't that what we want? Another angle, some fear that by making fish easier to locate, forward-facing sonar could impact predator-prey dynamics if certain sizes of fish are disproportionately removed. This is highly speculative, and there is actually no evidence of it yet even happening. But biologists will be looking at size distributions over time to see if, say, big crappie become rarer. So far, not seeing that beyond the normal cycles that do happen with every species. To conclude this section that we're in right now, let's recall a telling quote from Nebraska's Tony Barata. Forward-facing sonar might just catch somebody a limit faster. It does not mean they can keep more fish. Bag and possession limits still apply. That encapsulates why LiveScope isn't automatically a fisheries disaster. As long as anglers follow the rules, our lakes are not being emptied. Indeed, in many lakes, the number one killers of fish are still Mother Nature and humans in other ways, like habitat loss, pollution, winter kill, invasive species, and more and more. The panic headlines like LiveScope is destroying the lake are not backed by data at this time. By all means, we must keep studying and be ready to adjust in management if needed. And agencies are doing exactly that right now. But so far, the lakes are okay. And LiveScope is just one more factor in a very complex equation of fisheries management. So I'm gonna take another drink here because my voice is really getting dry here, and we're gonna see what the chat has. So I know I threw a lot of science at you, but I want to know like what are your questions about it? What are your comments about it and your harvest concerns? Wayne is saying SATT tournament on a lake near Brainerd just had over 180 teams of high school kids fish and catch over 2,200 fish in a 7-hour event. And only 50% of the boats have forward facing sonar. Good data point. Thank you for adding that in. That must be a specific tournament. SATT. I keep way less fish than before LiveScope. Virgil, thank you. I do as well, believe it or not. I used to keep more fish before LiveScope than I do now because I actually think it's fun to go out and learn about fish, target fish, catch fish, and release them and just get better at it and the fun of the reel, right? And of course, proper fish handling, letting them go, 100%. Wayne is saying, I have it. I do keep fish, but no more or less than before I had it. There you go. No change. Wayne, muskie are vulnerable post spawn. Leech Lake and the Steamboat Channel has demonstrated this. Yeah, for sure. And I think that's one of the studies that Minnesota is doing right now. They want to get the data, and then I think they will react with regulation appropriately. But I don't think the answer is nobody can use LiveScope for fishing, period, done, end of story, right? Ban the technology. That's not the answer. It may be for specific species you're not allowed to use it, right? And I think that's fine, right? 100%. I think that's fine. Specifically, if there's data backing specific problem areas. All right. Now, where are you landing on the topic so far? We're not done yet, but we're close. Are you saying ban it, regulate it differently, or just leave it alone? If you were a fisheries manager, what would you do about LiveScope? Live imaging, active target, mega live. And what surprised you most about tonight's information? Let me know. Okay, let's talk about ban. This is why, in my opinion, a ban doesn't make sense based on the research that I've done, the detail that we've outlined in this video. Number one, there is no hard proof that a ban would even help the fisheries. The best creel work that we have is that Arkansas Game and Fish's 700 boat survey that shows LiveScope users doubled their crappie catch, but took home only 3 more fish per trip. And biologists found little evidence to support any panic. Again, remember, out of the 700 boats, LiveScope users doubled the crappie catch, but only took home 3 more fish per trip. And only 16 of those 700 boats hit their cap for their limit in terms of the max bag that they could take. 16 of 700. So it's not like they were only keeping 3 more because they could, and then they hit their limit. Only 16 of those 700 hit their limit. A Bassmaster quoted fishery scientist echoes that. Most bass lakes already run on catch and release. So forward-facing sonar is not currently a biological concern. So there's 2 things. Crappie and bass, we got some data. Second, it's a blow to the industry and jobs. The fish finder market is on pace to hit about $925 million annually by 2030. Forward-facing sonar units are the growth engine for the fish finder market and those companies. If you kill them, and I get this isn't a popular thing, and this isn't what we're here to talk about, but I think it's a real negative impact if you were to just do a wide ban. If you kill live imaging and these companies and their growth, you're going to scorch their factories, their dealers, and the R&D pipeline that improves every graph that we use. Not to mention, and again, R&D for things even outside of live imaging. They're not going to have those funds to put towards those other R&D efforts. Not to mention all the DNR jobs that are going to be lost, fisheries biologists, stocking, management, and recreation jobs that are associated with people fishing, because less people would be fishing if they can't have it, right? Because they're going to be pissed off that they had to give up their $5,000 unit, right? Not to mention all the legal things, and it could go crazy. There's a risk. Three, there's a risk of freezing innovation and interest. Forward-facing sonar's video game feel is one of the rare hooks pulling the younger anglers into the sport. If you slam that door on new tech, you signal that fishing is done evolving, right? It's not about banning the technology. You've got to figure out a way to work with technology. If you're trying to stop the advancement of technology, man, that's a losing battle. Next, managers already have finer tools. When Mississippi saw crappie harvest creeping up, they dropped the daily limit to 10 fish instead of banning electronics. Bag and slot tweaks, seasonal protection, selective harvest education hit the conservation target without a legislative sledgehammer like banning would. It's bottom line. Banning forward-facing sonar outright is a blunt, high-cost remedy with unproven biological upside. So again, we're talking about the negatives of doing it. And again, there's not even a proven biological upside to even doing it in the first place. There's no real benefit that we know of, right? It's just the what if or the hypothesized. Most biologists, agencies, and even many skeptics agree. If you educate anglers, you adjust harvest rules when data warrant it, and keep assessing the tech's real world impact, forward-facing sonar is out of the bottle. It is. Guiding its use with sound science and ethics beats trying to cram it back into the bottle. Like, you're not going to do that. You will not beat the advancement of technology. And if you try to stop it, I mean, you're going to get ran over. So where do we go from here? Let me wrap this up where we started. Banning forward-facing sonar sounds simple, but in practice, it's drastic, messy, and so far unnecessary. After all, state biologists manage people and fish. This is worth saying and repeating. State biologists manage people and fish, not gadgets. So if they set smart limits, they don't have to tell people which buttons they can press, what gadgets they can use. That's the prevailing mindset across agencies that I've seen, and I respect and I appreciate. And frankly, most anglers that I've talked to are thinking about it the same way. Right now, the numbers say we're not seeing tech-driven population crashes. When harvest creeps up, managers adjust bag limits, tweak slot sizes, see how they react, maybe open them back up after. There's so many factors that go into this. That's the scalpel approach that needs to happen, not a sledgehammer. Just ban it. And anglers agree. Surveys show they'd rather keep a few fewer fish than junk $3,000 units that are bolted to their boats. Could that change? Sure. If solid data ever shows a fishery tipping over because of LiveScope or live imaging, regulators won't hesitate to act, and they shouldn't. But until then, the consensus is clear. Educate, adapt, and fine-tune regulations instead of outlawing innovation. Remember, fishing has always absorbed new tech, from flashers to GPS to side scan. But those things, when they were announced, when they came out, everybody hated them. Everybody was like, ban them, right? And they made it, and they're here. We absorbed it. Forward facing and live imaging, right? If you can't afford it, it doesn't mean ban it for other people. If it's something that you don't fish enough and can't justify the expense, it doesn't mean nobody else should be able to have it, right? That's not the answer. These things are going to come down in price. Look at Lowrance. They came out with the Eagle Eye 9, $9.99. You can get it, right? Our job is to use it responsibly, those of us that have it. Support data-driven management and keep the sport moving forward, screens and all. Okay. I want to hear your final thoughts. Are you convinced by the science? Do you still think it should be banned if you did think it should be banned? Or maybe you're somewhere in the middle. Drop your takes down in the comments or in the live chat, and let's keep the conversation going even when the episode gets over. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. All right, go through some comments here, and then we'll close her out. I would leave it alone and fix the winter kill problem. Yeah, I mean, get more aerators in there, right? That'd be great. Do you think these type of conversations are going to drive the prices of LiveScope up or down or have no effect? I think the bigger thing is like we're seeing other pressures right now that are driving prices up. And if you didn't hear earlier, somebody had asked a question and I confirmed it today. Garmin is planning on raising prices on July 1st for their stuff. I don't know how much for anything. There's two bundles that are out there. There's a 106 SV and a I think it's a 102. There's a 10-inch and a 12-inch ultra screen with LiveScope. It's a pretty good deal right now. Those are going up by $500 on the first. I think other factors like tariffs and access to technology and cost of living and all of those things, cost of wages, those are going to impact the cost of it more than this. I don't think this will really have too much of an effect on the prices of it. I would hope that there's more innovation, more competition, and the prices come down. And I think that we saw Lowrance do that just in this last year with the Eagle i9. I think the managers must monitor the lakes more closely. And by that, I mean to have creel surveys, monitoring social media for the hot lake bite news, and maybe adjust limits when necessary. It's not a bad idea. It's worth trying, right? Why not try it? We got Pete saying can't justify the cost. Yeah, right now it's expensive. 100%. 100%. It is expensive. But like all of the technology, it's coming down. It keeps coming down. So if today's deep dive helped you think through this issue, please smash the like button. I'd really appreciate it. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Can open up. I tried not to be too one-sided. I focused on the data. I tried to bring up all of the topics, all of the rebuttals, all the things that I've heard. Let me know if I missed something. And let me know, did you like this style? Did you like the layout of going deep into a specific topic with research, prepared remarks? Did you like this? Or I'm not saying we're getting rid of the other one. Tuesday is our next FGTN episode. We're going to be doing that one live, and that's kind of back to our normal gear, tech, news, all sale deals, and all of that. We've got 4th of July sales starting this next week, so make sure that you're tuning into that. So thanks, Wayne. Great discussion. Really appreciate it. Yeah. So until next time, take it easy. See y'all down in the comment section. Have a good night and tight line.